I never know whether or not it's live when it's doing the countdown or not. I don't know, but it looks like it's live, and I think we're live now. Hi, everybody. Mike Cadrew again. This is my second appearance today, and I try to stay out of these things, but Claire has me in a number of appearances today, so I am super excited for this next session with Akhilesh and with Chuck. I'm going to do some quick introductions, but some really quick housekeeping for you. Chuck and I and Akhilesh got together earlier and decided to put some poll questions up. So we want this to be the number one most interactive portion of your day. So I want you to go into the poll sections over to the right underneath the chat. Give me some answers about halfway through this. I'm going to close those polls. We need children's birth certificates, social security numbers, and bank accounts so we can all declare. No, I'm just kidding. A little bit of information about your where you are on supply diversity inclusion, and where you are from a reporting standpoint if you are reporting information. So with that, the topic of this discussion is getting diverse supplier spend to 26%, which I know most of the people who read this agenda were like, I'm going to call Foodus on this. But I assure you that after a couple of discussions with Chuck, Chuck's the real deal. Chuck and his team are amazing at what they've been able to accomplish. Akhilesh with Apex as well, apexanalytix. So why don't I do this? Just really, gentlemen, if you could start off, maybe we can start with Chuck and then we can go to Akhilesh. If you could introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about the company that you work with, and a little bit about your role and responsibilities, that'd be great. So Chuck, why don't you kick us off?
Thanks, Michael. Happy to be here today. Again, my name is Chuck Stefanosky. I'm the Director of Supplier Diversity with Independence Blue Cross. Been in procurement about 30 years. I've been with Independence about 20. Most recently leading their supplier diversity program. Our supplier diversity program is about 30 years old, maybe a little bit more than that even, and it's board directed and led by our executive leadership. We report out to the board of directors a few times a year. And the reason why I mentioned that, keys that we'll talk about a little bit later in the conversation, is that having that C-level board support, kind of like what measured gets met, what measures what matters gets measured, I guess is what the saying is. We have a lot of measurements in place for supplier diversity. We have our subcommittee to the to the board of directors is called the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, and that committee has goals for supplier diversity. The same as there's committees for human resources, strategic investments, initiatives, operations for the company. We're held to the exact same level, no less than any other committee. So the expectations are very high, and it really sets the tone for our record spend.
It's amazing to me that you've been doing this for 30 years. I don't think there are very many organizations that can say that they've been doing this for 30 years. And if I had to guess, if there is an organization that's doing this for 30 years, I would have put it somewhere in the health and just the healthcare industry as a whole. So it just seems to me that there's so much maturity there. Whether it's organizations and events like this and councils like what you have, the committee that you have, cooperative buying models, supply chain management. It just seems like the health industry and the healthcare industry as a whole is further ahead than the rest of us.
Akhilesh, the reason why, Mike, just if I may, the reason why we have it set up is when we set up our supplier diversity program, we had a real simple goal, and this is speaking well, I think, of our company, not just from a supplier perspective, but from a workforce perspective. We started DE&I because it was good for business, and our goal at a high level is to match the diversity of our workforce and our supply base to the community that we serve.
Absolutely.
That's why I think the business imperative is what drove the program. The program is what we needed to drive that initiative 30 plus years ago. So I think that's the why behind why the program has been so successful. It wasn't to meet some government requirement or to meet some other requirement. It really was what we wanted to do for our business.
Right. The answer to why are you doing this is because it's the right thing to do is always the best answer, right?
So, yeah.
And by the way, I noticed somebody else in the chat just said, "Hey, Chuck, good to see you. Congratulations on the morning presentation." This is the second of 3 presentations that Chuck is giving today. So I don't know if he's got enough to do a bio break or not or whatever, but he's killing it today. So just want to say thank you again to Chuck for all of his time. Akhilesh, introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about Apex. Tell us a little bit about your role at Apexanalytix. That'd be great.
Uh, yeah, so I'm Akhilesh Agarwal. I'm Senior Vice President for our technology as well as the Apex Portal supplier onboarding and management group. Uh, so I run both of the organizations. So my team's responsible for the implementation of the software as a service and then supporting our clients once they are live.
Yeah.
What does Apex do? If I talk about a why statement, it's to positively impact the lives and careers of our associates, customers, and partners, right? And a huge success story is, how Chuck and IBX succeeded in their initiative. So it solves our why statement, right? So really happy about that. And overall, Apex Analytics is involved into accounts payable audit. And then we also solve, the supplier onboarding, the supply inquiry, dynamic discounting, risk management through our technology solutions.
Fantastic, thank you. And I apologize, I dropped my pen. I'm going to lean over. So Chuck, like I said earlier, the topic of this conversation or the title of this session is getting diverse supplier spend to 26%. I got to be honest with you, base. If you would have come in and sat through the first couple of morning sessions, you would have been like, no way, hocus pocus. Talk to us a little bit about your program. Talk to us a little bit about how you measure that, how you've been able to, and what's included in that, and maybe just kind of a broad overview of that before we jump into a little bit more about types of clients and the groundwork and who your champions are and things like that.
Okay, so I guess there's two things that come to mind. Number one, your program has to be very intentional, right? And you have to do everything in being very intentional in what you're doing. Your measurements, your sourcing, everything has to be very intentional, measured, reported out to senior leadership. So basically, there's a strategy behind our supplier diversity program, the same as the company has a strategy for any other program that they would implement. Mm-hmm. So kind of what that looks like at Independence is we looked at all the spend that I would call quote unquote the easy stuff, like print, promotional, a lot of the tactical purchases that we do. That purchases have been diverse for many years and will continue to be. We've also had a lot of success in the technology space, consulting, and professional services areas. And the way that you want to build your program is you want to have what we call recurring spend. Let me talk about that for a minute. Is spend that is going to recur year after year, either as your company grows or just part of the business that you do on a daily basis. The reason why that's important, it's important to the supplier and to Independence, because we have a diverse supplier, so they're doing a good job. As we grow, their business get bigger. They use us as a reference for other customers. They're able to grow their business within the region. All good stuff. But Independence's base spend, that 26% that we talked about earlier, includes what we call a big chunk of recurring spend. That means we're not out there looking for a diverse supplier to fill that. We already have a good supplier in that space.
Right.
So every year we're getting this recurring spend that occurs year after year, and then we're adding to that in areas where we are getting, where we could do better in our diverse spend, like mainly in consulting and professional services. So what we do is we look for ways to just have spend that recurs time after time to grow that base, and then look for that additional, as we're talking to our board of directors and we're talking to our C-level suite, I'm saying, hey, what about, can we look at spend in this area or that area, maybe where we don't have as much as we would like, and we try to make new entrees in the different areas of the business. As well as a strong tier 2 program, we have a lot of tier 2 spend that rolls into that number as well.
Yeah, that's interesting. So your number, your primary objective, which is, or the primary number that we're talking about right now, is around 25-26%, right?
Yes.
Because of how you interpret whether or not it's reoccurring spend or non-reoccurring spend.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we do. What we do is we not to be overly confusing, but our recurring spend is about 26%, is what it was in 2021. I'm sorry, but in what we do is we have spend that's outside of, it's not really, it's like one-time spend. We build an office building, or we have some services that are not going to recur year after year. That spend actually brings us to about 28%.
Right.
but we don't really, we report it out both ways internally so that we can kind of track it and know that, spend that might not recur, it's a one-time spend. We want to give our leadership a sense of where our spend is going. Not that it's bad that we had one-time spend. It's just we want to be able to say the recurring spend is what we can kind of count on year after year, and then we look for additional spend to build the program from there.
And when we first talked and when we first met, by the way, I'm going to start closing down those polls in a couple of minutes. Just want to let that kind of die in the fabric a little bit. So if you're in here and you're one of the, I don't know how many people are in the room right now, but if you're in the room, please jump into the polls while we're talking and answer some questions so I can get some feedback on that. I think it'll be great data for you as well as great data for us. Chuck, one of the things we did talk about, and then Akhilesh, I want to talk a little bit about the types of clients you're seeing coming in the front door for you, because obviously not every client has a 30-year program in place and has drive down from literally the board of directors level, which I think is a must-have based on Chuck's success. But I'm going to come back to that in a second. Chuck, I know you talked about in the pre-discussion, we talked about sourceable spend versus non-sourceable spend, and that's a big point of clarification here for us, because I think some people look at it and say, I spend $10 billion a year in third-party spend. There is no way I'm getting to 2.6 billion, right? So can you outline for us a little bit of information associated with sourceable versus non-sourceable spend and how that calculates into your algorithm? Just so as people, because there's a lot of people in the room today. I know when we first started this out in the main lobby, I asked the question of, hey, where are you at in your maturity level? And almost 38% of the people answered, we're just getting started. So a lot of people are going to be looking to this particular session to say, okay, this guy is the de facto standard. He's leading the world. Where do I start? So can we talk a little bit about how people might define sourceable versus non-sourceable spend when they're building their KPIs?
Yeah, I can. I like to talk a little bit about the percentage of opportunity or percentage of diverse spend, that both are the same thing.
Perfect.
And also about some averages. And Mike, I'll bet you lunch that when you get the poll results back, the majority of the companies are going to be in the 3 to 8% range. And I would say to those of you that have a new supplier diversity program, if you just mine your data, use a tool like Akhilesh's through Apex, and go through and update your database to make sure that all the diverse suppliers within your database are asked to register and define as either diverse or not. Just by, if you're in a major city, you're going to find out that 3 to 8% of your spend is diverse already. You just don't know it, right? Now, to get to that calculation, there's two numbers. Like the top number is your diverse spend, right? So how much did you spend in a year with diverse suppliers? The key to that is all of our spend is certified. That means that all the suppliers are certified as a third party as diverse. You want to make sure you do that so that your number has validity. You'd hate to put a number out there and find out that some of the suppliers weren't certified. Maybe they weren't in fact diverse, and it would screw up your numbers. So you want to make sure certified suppliers are in your numerator. The denominator is your total sourceable spend. So I'll talk to it from an independence perspective. What's not in there is like board, charitable contributions, employee expenses, things like that are not related to a supplier. You wouldn't have that spend in that calculation. There's also not the provider spend, which is like the doctors and the hospitals that we pay, being that Independence is a health insurance company. So it's basically our administrative costs. Now, when you look at your percentage, think of it in terms of, that's a number that I use as a measurement. I want to know if it's going up or down year to year. I don't really care what yours is. I care what mine is. It's a benchmark. So at your company, when you determine your percentage of diverse spend, figure out your calculation, go to your FP&A, your financial planning and analysis folks, your budget folks, and say, give me your list of accounts, go through them, figure out which ones are sourceable and which ones aren't. That gets your denominator, you do your calculation, and that's where you draw your line in the sand. So like when I do percentage of opportunity calculations, that's what we call it. It's also percentage of diverse spend. I often get others that say, well, how does yours compare to mine? It's not the same industry. It's not a good number. Yeah. Like I'm not buying, we sell a promise. You get sick, we take care of you, right? We don't we're not a manufacturer. We don't buy widgets. We don't buy a lot of stuff.
Right.
85% of our spend is consulting and professional services and technology.
Right.
The other 15% maybe is paper, office supplies, printing, not furniture. It's not that much.
Right.
So I think you have to look at where your percentage falls within industry is probably a good number. But again, I find the most value for that number to be internal to the organization.
Yeah, that's a great point, that you shouldn't be trying to benchmark against everybody. Try and find some people that are in your industry that you can benchmark against, and then try and make sure that your calculations against people that you're trying to benchmark again as well. And if you can't find those people, by all means, and I'm going to plug the community for a second. If you can't find those people, just go into the Procurement Foundry Collaboration Slack community and ask, and then have a private conversation and sit down with people that are in your industry. So, Akhilesh, thanks for being patient. I really appreciate it. Let's talk a little bit about the people that are coming in the front door to Apex. Can you tell us a little bit about where people are at that are coming in, the types of clients that are engaging with you and saying, hey, I need help with my data. I need help with visibility. I need help with being able to set up programs like this. And you enable data visibility to be able to set up programs like this. What are you hearing from the maturity levels of the clients that are coming in the front door, and what are some of their goals and objectives that you're seeing?
Sure. So many of the clients that I work with, they initially come to Apex with a very manual process of supplier onboarding or management, right? It's typically email based or PDF based. And even if they have a supplier portal of any kind, it's more of a legacy solution that they are working with, which doesn't solve their problems. For example, like if they need to onboard a supplier, what they do today is they'll send a PDF, let the vendor fill it out, check the email, key in the information manually in the ERP, and then specific to bank account, they always have to make a call back to the supplier saying, look, you provided this bank account, is it correct? And do the validations ad hoc, right, outside of any formal controls and procedures, which is, I mean, to be honest, very prone to fraud, because even if you're talking to someone on the phone, you never know whether they are the authorized person or not, or they are impersonating the actual supplier. Right. So that's critical. So that's what we typically see, how we start. Now, during this manual process, what we are finding is we have clients who don't see how to be efficient or how to solve the problems or get better at it, right? What are the opportunities for improvement, right? So all of that is lost, and that's what we are talking about here. So companies that want to increase their diverse spend, they need to, first of all, have a supplier onboarding and management process that allows you to automate a lot of that, make it self-service for the suppliers, right? Like Chuck and IBX has done. And lastly, if everything's manual, then your work is going to have a lot of minimal or no impact, right? So I want to emphasize on it. How Chuck succeeded, to Chuck's point, was once they went live with the portal, they had suppliers keying in that data by themselves, and they got to learn much more than what they could have previously known.
Mike, to kind of what Apex helped to kind of bounce off what Akhilesh said was, we have a pretty stable program, long-standing program. We put Apex in, frankly, for another reason. We were looking at dynamic discounting, another module for another discussion, but it's been successful as well. But when we re-registered our suppliers, we had some suppliers that were LGBT certified suppliers, but they didn't feel comfortable, sadly, 10, 15 years ago, when we started using that designation. When they re-registered, they decided to reveal that they were, a certified supplier. It was over $1 million in spend. That we weren't capturing, because we went out and said, we asked all of our suppliers to re-register. And then we also had suppliers that had bought or sold during that time frame, and that changed their status. We found some more suppliers, and I'd say on a routine basis, we probably have 1 or 2 suppliers show up per month that are registering as diverse in our portal. We don't have to worry about forgetting them or missing them in our count. So it's been really nice to have that double check through Apex.
Yeah, I have to admit, one of the most amazing statistics I've heard so far today, Stephanie in her presentation said that her experience is only 5% of the eligible minority-owned businesses in the United States have actually certified and become certified, which to me is shockingly low, right? And like you said, getting and also another one was that I saw on the European discussion earlier was the amount of organizations that are minority owned, might be LGBTQ community owned, are not actually publishing their ownership for fear that it may drive business away, right? So it's interesting to see that you had that experience with a much more mature organization where people who weren't necessarily certifying in the past are now coming forward and starting to certify their businesses. And I'm sure, Akhilesh, you're seeing that in your side of the business as well, correct?
That's absolutely right, Michael. And
Yeah.
yeah, like especially when suppliers are registering, to your point, a lot of them may be not officially certified through agencies because they have not gone through that process.
Yep.
But what a portal also allows you to do in that case to mitigate it is upload like a self certification for diversity, right? So they can self certify with supporting documents, and then clients can take advantage of it.
Right. Yeah. So self-certification is becoming a big thing. Chuck, let's talk a little bit about the types of engagements with the partnerships that you have. You talked about reoccurring spend, and reoccurring spend is a massive part of what you do.
Mhm.
How do you nurture, grow, manage, continue those relationships with that vendor population? Do you have events where they come in? Do you have ongoing? I mean, everybody does a QBR thing, right? But what do you do above and beyond that? How do you manage those relationships? Do you treat them any differently than any other vendor population that you have in certain areas or things like that?
I see what we do is our sourcing group. So all of our sourcing managers that do all the purchasing for the group, they have goals to meet for supplier diversity. So it hits their pocketbook, right? It's in their annual review, and they're incentivized to hit the DE&I goals for the company. So that's one piece. So what we do is when we source all of our work, we try to include diverse suppliers on every bid
Yep.
or negotiation that we do, and then the best suppliers win. Sometimes they're diverse, sometimes they're not. The real strategy is include diverse suppliers in all your work. They will win and lose at the same rate as a majority company. So the good
That's
ones will win, the poor ones won't, and then that's how it goes. So by giving opportunity and doing that's one of the best ways, right? We also sponsor training and other things that we do. We have a lot of programs that help small and diverse businesses grow in our region. So it's not just that, but there is a lot of diverse businesses that are well qualified to do your work today. They
yeah.
don't need your training, they need your work, right?
Do you
Now
treat
that
them a little bit differently, Chuck? I'm just curious. Do you treat them a little bit differently when they come in? Like, do you offer them a little bit of favorable, I don't know, payment terms? So instead of the net 30 that is always there, you're giving them net 90 to give them a little bit more cash flow time and things like that. Are you kind
well,
of help nudge them along, or?
well, what we do is we actually do better than that. We offer immediate payment terms if you're a diverse supplier.
I'm sorry, I said that the back.
Yeah,
My
yeah,
apologies. You know what
yeah.
I meant, so thank you for correcting me.
Yeah, so we don't. What we do is that was a change we made last year, and a big problem for a lot of small and diverse businesses is access to capital.
Mm-hmm.
This is one way to address it.
Right.
And keep in mind, we don't do much facilities work, construction. We only have one building in Center City, Philadelphia. So it might be more difficult to do that if you were doing like construction, building buildings and widgets. But for us, it's mostly it's usually a large part of our what we do are services, and a big challenge for a lot of small businesses, diverse businesses, is really payroll. And by paying immediate, they're able to invoice for work they perform, get paid, and be able to pay their employees. So
Yeah.
it really helps to do that. Another reason why we do it is we're an insurance company. We have a lot of cash on hand that's required for our business.
Yeah.
Our cost of capital is much lower. So it really is it's a worthwhile investment for us
Great.
to help those businesses to help us, be successful.
Gentlemen, this session is flying. I only have about 5.5 minutes left. I'm going to close the poll so that we can get a little information on that. First question inside of the room is, Chuck, what categories do you see a high percentage of diversity spend in? Similar positions here where we don't buy a lot of stuff. I think you touched on the easy stuff, tech, recruiting, spend, and consulting. Maybe you can elaborate a little bit more while I look at the polls.
I would say if I was looking at it, I'd say look at contingent labor. It's a big part of our spend. Technology, meaning resellers of hardware and software. All the big guys use resellers. Why not use a diverse one and get some spend in there?
Exactly, right? I mean, it's going to all be just about the same. I
Yeah.
won't name any names. They're not hard to find, right?
They're not.
They're
No,
not hard to
not at all.
find. All right, let's jump in, Akhilesh. I just want to run through some numbers here really quickly. So it looks like 25% of the folks in the room are trying to get between 1% and 3% spend. Again, it depends on your industry, depends on your category, depends on how you're defining that KPI, what is spendable, addressable spend versus non-addressable spend maybe. About 21% are in the 3 to 5% category. 5% are in the 15% and up, and it's basically 2020, 15 from 1 to 3, 3 to 5, 5 to 10, and 15 up. So you can take that away from today as one of the learning things. And then the other question that Chuck asked, which is key to his success, he said, was making sure that you're regularly reportable to your board of directors or executive leadership steering committee. And it's looking like that's coming out right around 50-50 on people who are directly reporting and people who are not. Do you have C-level or board of director level support for your supplier diversity program? 80% say yes, 20% say no. Any surprises on any of that, gentlemen?
That's encouraging. A lot of companies don't really have the 80-20. I would have expected to be lower. The percentages that are the 1 to 3, I think if you do your data about validation, I bet you're going to be in the 3 to 8%. Just due to the nature of just doing some good background on your benchmarks. So I'd say the ones that are at that level really are probably higher than 3%. I'd be surprised if you're doing nothing at all. You're probably at 3 to 8%.
Yeah, and you probably don't even know it because you probably don't know which of your vendor population are actually minority owned and which ones aren't, right?
Just cleanse your data, figure out your baseline. I'd be very surprised if you're not 3 to 8. If you're not, Mike will buy you lunch.
Sure, why not? Akhilesh and I will split the bill. Akhilesh, any surprises in that data, or does it ring true like Chuck said for you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm actually happy to know it's at least 80%, and our collective goal should be to get it higher and higher across the board. But yeah, love that number. And like Chuck said, right, like one of the things anyone can do very, very quickly is we also have this Smart VM offering, which connects to 100 plus diverse databases. So even before you implement a supplier portal, you can just run it against our database, the Smart VM offering, and get to know how many diverse suppliers you have, and it instantly boosts up your spend because you're already spending that money, you just don't know it.
Yeah,
exactly.
One of the most active things in the chat as we're talking, gentlemen, would love to hear more about self-certification best practices. I'm not going to dive into that because we only have 2 minutes left. If you want to know about best practices in self-certifications, Akhilesh and the entire Apex team have a booth in the expo. Just go down there and talk to them after this session. I'm sure the team would be more than happy to talk to you about their capabilities in self-certification and how people gain access and get into their, like he just said, tying into their 100 databases of information. Okay, so let me ask you this: 2 minutes, 1.5 minutes left to go for you guys. I feel like we're racing to the finish line. Chuck, I don't know how we just burned through 25 minutes, but I would love to do another 3 hours with you someday. What's the one takeaway for people to start, right? People who are looking at this and being like, yeah, this guy's got 30 years in, he's got board of director level access. What's the one thing people can do to start? Give me 30 seconds on that, and then I'll finish up with Akhilesh.
I'd say be intentional in what you're doing. Develop a strategy the same way you would for any other process in the company. Get your C-level support and move forward from there. The strategy should be attacked in the same way as any other strategy.
Yeah, be intentional. Get C-level support. Don't try to boil the ocean. Make sure you know the numbers that you're actually trying to achieve. Because and I would add one more in, which is maybe try and find a benchmark, right? Like Chuck said earlier, it changes by industry. It changes by the dynamics, whether you're a professional services, intellectual property shop, or whether you're manufacturing combine harvesters, the numbers are going to massively change across the board on this thing with you. And
don't worry about the other guy. Just do your benchmark. Your benchmark's your benchmark. Go forward. You're going to see others' numbers, but don't sweat it. Look at your benchmark and keep moving the needle.
Akhilesh, anything left to add in the last 15 seconds, buddy? What's your takeaway for everybody today?
Yeah, sure. I mean, what I'm hearing is like everyone wants to exceed their diversity goals, right? So, it's something that will make your teams proud once you achieve that goal. So, my recommendation is give them the technology to do this. And, we have the technology which Chuck is using, so everyone can take advantage of it. So, just go do that.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you, guys. I'm sorry we're out of time. It's been amazing. I wish we could have done this for an hour. And if you've got more questions, please jump in and talk to Akhilesh and the team down there at Expo booth. Chuck, thanks again.
Thanks.
And good luck with the rest of your day, pal.
A pleasure. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.